Oh, you're listening to the CUPS Prodcast from the Credit Union Product Strategy Network. We're documenting the stories and insights of the people shaping the evolution of product management in credit unions. I'm Andy Wright.
And I'm Derek Ross.
Today, we're thrilled to sit down with Becky Reed, well-known financial services strategist, executive, speaker, and author, dedicated to helping financial institutions thrive in an era of rapid technological change. Through her work on leadership, artificial intelligence, payments, digital assets, and financial infrastructure, she's challenging organizations to embrace innovation in ways that strengthen trust, deepen relationships, and improve the financial lives of the people they serve. Becky, welcome.
Hi, you guys.
So great to have you. There are a lot of people out there talking about AI in the credit union space, and fewer, but a lot of people talking about stablecoin, blockchain. But when you talk about it, I feel like I actually understand it. Like I walk away with something, which is why we are so thrilled to have you on the show. You've done put a lot of great information out there on the Grow Your Credit Union podcast, in your articles, in the book that you just put out. So we're excited to get into it.
Awesome. Me too.
Let me just start with your journey, because you started as a leader of credit unions, founded your own Fintech, wrote the book. Now you're going around. I love the Where in the World is Becky posts that you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about that journey and like what has been pulling you in this direction?
Oh my gosh, what a journey, right? So I started in credit unions all the way back in 1996. If you can even believe that. So many folks that are listening probably were still in diapers in 1996, right? But it's been quite the journey. And I have seen a lot of change in the industry since
Definitely.
1996. And I've also seen challenges. I think that the challenges that we faced in the 90s and even into the early 2000s, frankly, pale in comparison to the things that we're dealing with today. Most specifically around the speed at which change is taking place and the type of change that we're seeing in the financial institution industry, credit unions specifically, is disruptive change, right? I mean, it really is disruptive. And so I really doubled down on the notion that we as credit unions need to disrupt ourselves. Instead of allowing these external forces to disrupt us, we really needed to take it upon ourselves to be the disruptive force in the industry. And of course, no better place to do it than a member-owned financial cooperative, right? It is our job. It is our job to make sure that the consumers, our members that we serve every day, are utilizing the latest and greatest that is available out there. That is why we exist. And so on that journey, there's a lot of technology involved in my career journey. And so I've always been a very tech forward person and a bit of a visionary as it relates to what's kind of beyond the horizon. And so, yes, I founded several technology QSOs and started with the network side of the house and then moved into blockchain, stablecoin, digital assets, and AI. And so today I work at a Fintech. I left my CEO job at the credit union and where I served for more than a decade. And now over on the Fintech side of the house. So I have a very broad perspective as it relates to disruptive technology.
Definitely. And you made a point in your book that credit unions themselves were a disruption from the very beginning. And so there's just a natural fit there.
It is. I call the credit unions the OG, right? They're the original DeFi. So decentralized finance actually came about when the credit union movement began in the 1800s in Germany. And I really don't see what's happening today as being that much different than what it was back then. Certainly the tools that we use, the products, certainly that we provide to our members is different, slightly, but, the idea is the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got some amazing tech stacks changing, just some foundational deep insight going, but then product strategy as a whole has become more of a spotlight in credit unions, I think, as we've gone along. And so with your work through, BankSocial and Pure IT and just your background of where you are, who owns product strategy at credit union?
Well, it's evolved just like everything in the space has evolved. I think that in hindsight, because I know now what it's like to work for a software company where we actually build products from scratch, right? Where you whiteboard something and in a week, and now with AI a day, you can have a prototype that you can play with. And that perspective on the fintech side of the house, when I look back at how we develop products in the credit union, it really sat most of the time in one of two places: marketing or IT, one of the two, and completely different focuses for both, because marketing is more about the experience and the sales process, right? Making sure we've got people who are using it. And IT tends to be more around the functionality, how it's fitting in with other pieces of our tech stack. And, not really focused at all on how the member is experiencing the particular product. And so I think that, like many things in our space, I was just talking to someone about this earlier today as it relates to information security, right? So traditionally, information security has lived on the IT side of the house, and compliance, risk, and fraud has lived on a different side of the house, and how those two things are merging. And I think that's what's happening with product today. I think that it is a hybrid of both marketing and IT. I think that's where it kind of needs to live now.
Interesting. I really like that you mentioned, I want to come back to this, the digging into the member insights, talking to the end user. Now that you're on the fintech side of it, you're thinking about, oh, I didn't see that on the credit union side, right? You're thinking in agile and sprints and research and iterations. It's a lot. It's a lot. Now that you're getting to travel around and talk to a lot of different credit unions and CEOs, what convinces leadership, if anything, that product strategy deserves dedicated leadership and its own org within the credit union?
Well, I still hear the comment a lot that our members aren't asking for this.
Huh.
And yeah, and it comes down to, okay, many times product decisions get made in a credit union based on what we think our members want. But are we directly asking them? Sometimes we do, right? Sometimes we send a survey, but a survey data is often skewed, because what survey data shows is, hey, do you want a branch next to your house? Yeah, absolutely, I do. But is that really going to move the needle? Is that member going to leave the financial institution because we don't have a branch next to their house? Probably not. And then I'm going to also go back to the Henry Ford analogy, right? People didn't ask for horseless carriages.
Exactly.
They didn't, because they couldn't have even imagined what a horseless carriage was. How can I even want something that I have no idea? Apple, right? Steve Jobs says, you just put it in their hands. That's when they find out that they want it. They're not going to ask for it before that, because they don't even know what to ask for. And so I think we get in this rut in the credit union space. Yes, we're trying to serve our members' needs. Yes, we want to be responsive to what they're asking for. But when they don't even know what's possible, how can we be responsive to that? And so I think that we have to do a much better job, and we have the tools now. look, the data is showing us all kinds of things. I'm going to talk about digital assets for a minute. Most credit unions, like our members, don't really care about digital assets, certainly not a stable, right? It's like, why don't you look at your data? Your data is telling a story. Are they buying from Coinbase? Are they buying from Kraken? Are they buying from crypto.com? Oh, and they don't want a stable coin? Well, a stable coin is a faster payment, right? Well, how about Venmo and Cash App? How many of your deposits are going out every single day to those things? And why aren't you looking at incorporating those into products that you have at your financial institutions? So I think that we as an industry can do better. I speak in generalities, of course, because there's certainly edge cases that are unique and different. But in general, I think that when we as an industry look at our product suite, it's boring. It's like, how can you really enhance a checking account? And I think we fall prey to the we don't even know what to ask for either, because we don't even know what's possible. And I can tell you firsthand, coming over to the fintech side of the house, I know now what's possible. And I'm like, holy Toledo. All I needed to do was just ask and it can be done.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes we get ourselves into a little bit of a box as it relates to what we really think is product development.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I also think, going back to what you were talking about with like surveys and just what people want, like taking the banking side out of it and just talking about people in general, right? We say a lot of things, but our actions speak louder than words, right? That's the expression. And so what you're saying to me really makes sense and we're starting to get, we as in the credit union space are starting to get the tools to analyze transactional and behavioral data to start integrating some of that. That resonated quite a bit with me. And I think it kind of goes back to like, I don't know, the evolution of product as it continues to grow. If you had to mark the moment product went from being something someone handled as a side project to being truly disruptive, truly point and center, part of the strategic fabric of the credit union, when do you think that happened, or when is the time, or what are some examples around that happening?
Well, I don't think it's happened industry wide at this point. I still think that product development as it is perceived is hasn't really gained a lot of traction or attention. And again, it goes back to, we don't really know what our members want. Not really. We're not really looking at our data. And that's been a thing for quite some time. That's not something that's new. Another thing that credit unions don't think about is, again, speaking in generalities, but we don't test things. We don't just do a proof of concept just to see how it works. We tend to think of, we are going to build a product and we're going to give it to everybody and we're going to see how they use it.
Great point.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of this, we'll build it and we'll give it to everyone and see how it does, instead of let's have a focus group. Let's try this with a limited number of people and sandbox it, right? It doesn't have to be available, and we don't have to spend tons and tons of time and resources building this thing or partnering with somebody who has this massive thing that takes 6 months to integrate with all of our clunky systems, only to find out that no one even wants it and no one cares and no one uses it. So we can't even get a good ROI on it. And so I think that folks like you are helping to shine a light on the fact that this is an area that I think we're all looking for ways to gain efficiencies. We're all looking for ways to grow our membership. We're all looking for ways to expand our product suite, right? To products per member, right? We all want people to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? We do. Well, but no one is really responsible for that. Marketing kind of is. Maybe IT is, maybe. And so I think that talking about it more and really getting people to think about, hey, this is something that we can do. I understand now what a horseless carriage is, and I understand that perhaps we can have one.
You mentioned a great example there. Earlier, we were talking about what goes on in SaaS companies, what goes on with our fintech partners that we talk to every day that we should be bringing onto our side of the house. Piloting, just having the infrastructure that lets you pilot and experiment and really get that fast cycle feedback. And I think you just put your finger on what we're trying to do really with cups and conversations like this is learn from our partners that there is a discipline out there. There are practices that we can be using to help us mature in how we develop product.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I did as a CEO, or one of the things I started doing, and I learned this by starting QSOs, and certainly I see it now that I'm over on the fintech side of the house, because as a fintech, there is nothing that would make us happier than have a prospective client or an existing client just try something out. I mean, give us feedback on it, right? Just play with it for a couple of days and tell us what you think. And in credit union land, a lot of times they're like, well, we have to go through this RFP and we have to find the right vendor. It's like they go in the strategic planning and they say, I'm going to use stablecoin, for example. We're going to let our members use stablecoin. Okay, great. So now they go and they try to find some stablecoin vendor, right, that gives them that functionality, instead of going, you know what, has any of us ever actually used a stablecoin as a payment? Maybe we need to try that first and see then what we find is important. I mean, even just having your employees try it. And so what I used to do as a CEO at the credit union is I would have fintechs approach me, right? Oh, here's our great product, whatever. And I'd be like, yeah, why don't you give it to us for free? Let's try it. I'm not asking for free forever. And I'm not saying that it needs to be free when I roll it out to my whole membership, but let me try it. We can do that in a safe sandbox way. It doesn't have to be connected to my core. We can get the feel of it, and even our members can come in and get the feel of it without having to do this big giant project. And so I think that if we started thinking more about that, because as a credit union, working with that fintech, oh my gosh, I actually learn what is possible, because I can give feedback and they come back tomorrow and they just put in the software what I told them about yesterday. What? Huh? That's incredible. You mean this isn't some static thing that has to sit like this for 5 years and not ever do anything different?
Right.
No, it can change. It can be, iterative. It can be customized. And I think a lot of times credit unions don't even know what's possible until they work with their trusted partners to see.
That is so true. If you haven't in a while, it is really surprising. It's really refreshing how nimble these partners are, because we're used to big, heavy core systems. We're used to lengthy RFPs. But there is a
large waterfall.
Precisely. There is a spirit of experimentation out there. I do want to give a shout out to our friends at Filene. There's a lot of credit unions, big and small, who have the appetite. I'm speaking more to the process. Like, how do you do it? What's the most efficient way to do it? What's the most risk-averse way to do it? And there's a lot we can learn from our fintech partners in that area. But coming back to your excellent book, you made a big point in there about credit unions and DeFi being connected by this shared philosophy of ownership and empowerment, controlling your financial life. What do you say, though, to people who have heard about crypto, Bitcoin in particular in the news, some of the less positive things going on in that space? What do you say to credit union folks who are intimidated or feel like this entire topic is less inclusive?
I think what is interesting and what I've always believed is that the purists on either side of the house, right? So a pure DeFi enthusiast ultimately believes that banks shouldn't exist, that everything can be done on the blockchain side of the house. Everything can be done over there without a regulated entity in the middle. They're no longer needed. They're obsolete. I can do everything
Okay, talk
myself.
about intimidating.
And so that's a
Yeah.
pure, yeah, right. Yeah. So you're like, well, I'm a financial institution and you just thought I can't exist. And frankly, that is what intrigued me most about Bitcoin. I really didn't care too much about the investment aspect of Bitcoin. But what did fascinate me is number one, the decentralized network. That was fascinating to me. But my number two is I can send a store of value 24/7 by 365 without a banking intermediary. Wait, what? That disintermediates me, right? So I'm a financial institution. That's a game changer for me that somebody can send a payment to someone else without me. That's kind of freaks me out. And so I need to be paying attention to it. So the pure DeFi people are like, don't need banks, don't need credit unions, don't need any of that. Now, on the other side of the house, you have the financial institutions saying, we don't need that, right? We already do P2P payments. We already do all of these things. We already have the mechanisms. So why do we need to incorporate anything else? i.e. our members aren't even asking for it. So why should we pay attention to it? So you have both of those things. I think for credit unions, what I would really recommend is get to know the DeFi people, because let me tell you something. The DeFi folks, when they find out that you can actually own a financial institution and you can actually be a part of the governance of a financial institution, they are all in. They other than the ones who say that banks shouldn't exist at all. But most people, look, there's people on the far edge cases of everything, right? Most of the time people fall somewhere in the middle. And I think that what we are seeing here in the United States and around the world is, again, this merging of let's utilize the technology that's available on the DeFi side. And some of that philosophically fits very nicely into the financial cooperative model, but we also need to have consumer financial protection that are a part of the process, right? We're talking about financial transactions here, and doing financial transactions in a completely unregulated way doesn't make sense. Most people wouldn't do that, right? They're like, well, I'm not doing that because I'm going to lose my money. And we're seeing it now, right? So, these things happen. And so we've got to have consumer financial protections that are involved. We've got to make sure that trusted, and it's important, that word, trusted financial institutions, consumers trust financial institutions. So how can we have this merging of the best of both worlds? And I think, and that's kind of what my book is about, that we should embrace each other. Both communities should embrace each other, and credit unions should get to know the folks on the DeFi side of the house, because I think we'd be friends.
Absolutely. And you're already having these conversations, I believe. You're already bringing the DeFi people together with the credit union and opening eyes on both sides. And by the way, we're talking about Credit Unions and DeFi, a Financial Renaissance, your book, which is a fascinating read that I highly recommend. Goes into nitty-gritty details about all the acronyms, the DLT, the DAO, very educational.
OMGs.
Yeah. Yes. And in the book, one of the things you say is wallets will eat the mobile app. This caught my attention. And you talk about the urgency of credit unions building and offering wallets to members. Help me understand what this looks like, because today I use a wallet, but it is not FI specific. I use Apple Wallet, I think, more than anything. And it is FI agnostic. And I put my concert tickets and all sorts of stuff in there. What does this look like in a credit union iteration?
So a digital wallet, it's unfortunate that it's also called a wallet, because I think that vernacular is already familiar in the space. as it relates to like what you just talked about, Apple Wallet, right? Just a digital example of something you in the analog world would hold in your pocket,
Mhm.
right? Where you have all your different credit cards in there, like you said, your concert tickets, your airline tickets, those kinds of things, where it's more like a holding place for all of these things that live in the digital world. Well, a digital wallet specifically is your connection, basically your UI, your user interface to the blockchain. So whenever you access the blockchain, you open a wallet and you get a wallet address for that particular blockchain. And if it's a multi-chain wallet like ours is at BankSocial, you can see multiple chains, right? So you can see Ethereum, you can see the blockchain, which is Bitcoin, you can see Ripple, which is XRP, and on and on. And so that kind of wallet is more akin to a digital banking app.
Right.
Now, a digital banking app is a user interface that displays to the member what is in the core. So that's all digital banking is just a representation of what the core is showing. So the employee uses the core, the member uses the digital banking, but it's displaying the same information. So a digital wallet is just the user interface to the end consumer of what's on the blockchain, right? It's just a visual representation of what is recorded on chain. Same kind of thought process. Now, as it relates to infrastructure, completely two different things. A blockchain is a different type of infrastructure than the credit union core system. And I think, as I've been talking about, kind of a theme throughout this entire discussion is that merging, right, of the technologies and the blockchain functionality and capability acts very much like a core, whether it's a public chain or a private permission chain, either one, same type of infrastructure is required. And that I think is going to be what the future of financial services is built on. And so I think that the digital wallet that lives on a blockchain will eventually replace what we know today as digital banking that's just connected to our core.
Perfect. Thank you. I knew I would get some digital currency 101 here, and there was definitely some confusion there. It feels like what you're describing is kind of an instrument almost between online banking and a debit card. It's your access to this network and your money. Super helpful. Super
Exactly.
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, like a multifaceted tool, like online banking / peeking at the core / document archival purposes. Like everything could kind of run through this.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense. I think one of the concerning parts that I have when we talk about DeFi and stablecoin and just the items around that is, most of our checking accounts, whether checking accounts in general or like our high yield accounts where we're having this, a lot of it's built off of the backbone of interchange income. So there's a lot of builds around interchange income. So what does it look like in the future where transactions aren't maybe going through the debit rail? Like how do we plan for that shift?
Oh, it will happen. Interchange will 100%, as we know it, go away. Now, you have probably seen in the news that Visa in particular, MasterCard hasn't been quite as much in the news or maybe as vocal about it, but Visa has been quite vocal about it acquiring blockchain technology, adding digital asset functionality, stablecoin functionality, because why? Look, Visa has been paying attention to what's happening with stablecoins since 2020. You can go online and you can see they've been following it, and you can see the volume. When I started looking at it, the volume was, $1 trillion a month, and now it's like $50 trillion a month. Well, I don't know, it's maybe not that high, 30. It's crazy. It's expanded exponentially worldwide, and I think that for us to think that this isn't going to change our business model, again, I'm going back to that Bitcoin thing again. I think that would not be the right way to think. Now, All that being said, I'm not a doomsday person. I don't think the sky is falling, but do we need to plan for and be prepared for interchange income to start to decrease as stablecoins start to increase? 100% yes. Now, that also presents wholly new opportunities for revenue that we hadn't even considered yet or haven't even been thought of yet because we're not there. So a stablecoin moving on a blockchain has a fee. It does. It does cost money to move tokens across a blockchain network. It does. Now, it's infinitely less than the Visa or MasterCard rails, infinitely less. So merchants, of course, are going to move that direction. Now, is there room to put something on top of that if it moves across your private permission chain, perhaps? Which the big banks, guess what they're doing? They built a private permission chain, just like they did with the Zelle network. Why? To capture that revenue, the transaction revenue, because it's a private permission chain. You can charge whatever you want. So are there going to be new opportunities for us? 100% absolutely. But if we bury our heads in the sand and go, we're not, our members aren't asking for this. We're not going to pay attention to it. We're not going to do anything about it. 3 or 4 years later, you will not have invested in the infrastructure that's necessary to be able to adopt these technologies when they become popular. And so all I ask is that financial institutions right now, talking about credit unions here, credit unions just don't turn a blind eye. But it's nothing to be scared of. Nothing to be scared of. But it's time to maybe dip our toe in the water so we can get ready.
We're here for this, Becky, for you to hold our hand and tell us it's going to be okay. Major changes are coming.
It will be okay.
And it's a perfect segue to something you said in your book. Infrastructure is the new strategy. Pretty big statement. Could you tease that out a little bit for us? What do you mean by that? What does it mean for somebody leading product at a credit union?
Oh my gosh, it's huge for folks that lead product because the infrastructure is changing and it's evolving. Now, what it does not mean is that our existing infrastructure just needs to be ripped out. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is as financial products start moving into the decentralized space, which is blockchain. And I believe, personally, I could be wrong, but I believe that most financial transactions will move to the decentralized finance side of the house over the next decade. Already we're seeing it happen with the S&P 500, a lot of the Wall Street security transactions that are happening are being tokenized, and real world assets are starting to be tokenized. So this is absolutely something that is a thing. And as credit unions, our infrastructure, we have two main pieces of infrastructure that we have right now today. We have our core database, right? And then we have our network architecture, our infrastructure, which is our servers and our desktops and, our internal network. I think that we are going to start to see a movement toward blockchains as being the infrastructure that all these things are built on. Your core will be blockchain based, probably not public blockchain, but, private permissioned blockchain because your core is something that you own and it's a centralized database. So, but because of all the things that are already going to be built on blockchains, digital assets, stable coins, all the payment rails are going to start moving to this type of infrastructure. And so making sure that your existing infrastructure is able to interact, not necessarily be replaced by right now, but interact with that world is something that we need to start be thinking about now. So it's kind of like you have to build a foundation for your house before you can start putting the walls up. And right now we're at a place where we have a foundation, but it's cracking and it needs to be replaced. So how do we build our house on a new foundation while still living in the old house?
Big questions.
Yeah, that makes a lot. Yeah.
Well, I think what we tend to do in credit union land is we buy a point solution and it generally stays static. I think the fintechs of the world that partner with credit unions do a poor job of keeping the credit unions updated on what new that they're working on, right? The new things that they're doing and engaging their clients in that. And that's something here at BankSocial that we try to break the mold a little bit on, right? So having come from a financial institution, I didn't very often get one of my fintech partners reaching out to me going, "Hey, we have this new thing. Do you want to try it? I mean, we think you'll really love it. Do you want to try it?" You know what? First of all, I'm probably going to pick up the phone or I'm going to respond to the email because I know them, right? I'm their customer. And, um, and, having them launch something that I didn't know anything about is kind of
Uh-huh.
frustrating, right? It's like, well, I just spent cycles looking at 3 other vendors for this. Whenever you do it, I didn't even know. And so that's something that we try to do at BankSocial is engage the teams and continue to foster those relationships inside of the financial institution so we can do cool stuff together. So we actually have credit unions reaching out to us going, "Hey, can you do this?" And we're like, "You know what? Yeah, I think we can. Let's try it. Let's do it." So we have several pilot, like proof of concept things happening with credit unions that because they asked, because we maintained that relationship. And as a credit union person, I didn't have developers in house. I didn't have people who wrote code, right? I had people who were
Right.
really, really good at credit union stuff, right? But not good at writing software, and everything we do is software now, right? And so it's a mutually beneficial relationship to have the product folks inside of the credit union work with our dev team because the product folks are basically the people who are saying, "This is what I'm thinking about, right? Here's kind of what I'm thinking." And the developers are like, "Oh, all right. Well, how about this? What if I could do this?" And sitting there right next to them, going back and forth. "Well, what about this? What should this button look like? Where should this be? What should that do?" The developer saying, "Well, have you thought about this?" And the product person going, "No, I never even thought about that, but that's a great idea." So I think that really truly looking at our fintech partners as partners and not just a one and done solution is something we should be product folks specifically should be looking.
Do you find in that situation it's easier for your team when there is some product um, discipline on the credit union side, when you are kind of speaking the same language, uh, building into a roadmap? Have you noticed from one client to another that that's helpful to the vendor?
It depends. And it depends on the product, right? And it depends on the expertise of the person at the credit union. I wouldn't expect, for example, a product person at a credit union to be well versed in P2P stablecoin transactions. I don't think that would work. However, agile methodology, yes. Sprint cycles, yes. Using AI to write out a product description and a product plan, yes. So those kinds of things, I think that when you are speaking the same language, I do think that is helpful because agile is all about iteration, right? It's tiny, tiny chunks. Build something quick, really quick, test. Yes, looks good. Go back to the drawing board, rebuild it again, make it better. Yes, that looks good. It's very iterative. And I think that the product teams of the credit unions who understand that definitely have a leg up.
Excellent point. And whether you are a VP of product or director of product, or even have that word in your title, you make an excellent point that just these are some muscles we can learn to flex within credit unions. How to write a requirements document, how to build a roadmap. Um, So those are things you do daily that I'm sure we can benefit on the credit union side from just being more acquainted with. Okay, one more for you. If somebody were to discover what we're doing now at Cups 10 years from now, we're trying to build an archive here. What do you hope they'll understand about this moment in the evolution of product management inside of credit unions?
Well, I think 10 years from now, financial institutions are going to look a lot different than they do today. I think that they will look much more similar to a software company than they do to a analog brick and mortar financial institution, because everything is moving to digital. Now, I say this a lot as well, that there has got to be a human aspect to all of this. People still want to interact with people, and people don't blindly just trust technology. They just don't. And so the differentiation that we provide as credit unions is that human factor and trusting the human, right? That there is somebody I can reach out and touch and speak to that has a face and a name that I know and who knows me. That is a very important aspect to what we do as financial institutions. However, all of that can be enabled by software now. And so looking back, I think that if we listen to this podcast, I hope that we will say, you know what? They kind of were onto something. They maybe saw what was coming and encouraged people to move in that direction that helped facilitate what is to be.
Amazing. Well, this is such a big topic. The things you cover are so broad and so fascinating, so vital. We're really grateful to have some of your time today to sit down and explore some of these topics. Thanks so much for coming by the Cups Prodcast.
Thank you. I love what you guys are doing. Product in credit unions is something we need to pay more attention to. Thanks for what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Becky.